All right. Welcome, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us today for Slow Down to Speed Up, using clarity and intuition to make better decisions. I'm one of your hosts today, Nat Trodahl. For those of you that don't know me, I grew up in survival mode, and for years, that same intensity showed up in my professional life. And what I eventually discovered is that the real key to success isn't just working harder and continuing in that grind, but it really is learning how to manage yourself first. Today, I help leaders and teams learn to de-escalate themselves, to stay calm under pressure, and turn emotional reactivity into strategic, smart results. With me today as my co-host is Katie Schuelke. And Katie has actually spent 25 years in project management, which means that she's lived through every kind of leadership chaos you can imagine. Along the way, she's learned that success isn't just about strategy and spreadsheets, it's about power skills, those human skills that actually keep teams engaged and projects moving forward. And so with that, let's just jump right in. Let me be real honest with you about how I used to handle stress. It's not my finest moment, but anytime something went wrong at work, and honestly, you just anywhere in my life, my nervous system went straight into fight and flight. First, it would go into fight. I'd get an attitude, push back, roll my eyes, and sometimes I would even snap. Then the flight would kick in. I'd just leave. I'd hop to another job, one after another, or another situation, or another boyfriend. Hello, thinking that that was the answer. The crazy part is that when you look back or talk to anybody that knew me in that time of my life, from the outside looking in, I looked strong, decisive. Some even call me disciplined. But inside, I was just stuck in that survival mode, constantly reacting instead of responding to really what was happening. And for a long time, I thought I was crazy. I thought I was broken. But I learned that it wasn't just part of my personality and that I couldn't do anything about it. It was my nervous system doing what it's designed to do under pressure. And when stress takes over, your body reacts. You guys, your body reacts before your brain has a chance to think. And that's why reactive decisions happen. So that is really what we're going to be talking about today. And I'm going to focus on how to calm yourself and really be able to get the clarity that you need. And that how once you quiet that noise, then you can access your intuition, which helps us all make better decisions. And Katie will get to that in just a little bit. But as I started, I'm noticing that people are continuing to join. I just want to say hello again and welcome. Look, the chat is saying hello, people, where you're joining from. I absolutely love it. So keep it coming. Loving the energy that we are seeing. It's very, very exciting. All right, so we're going to go ahead and continue on. I want to talk about why reactive decisions happen to begin with, because reactive decisions don't just come out of nowhere. Sure, you might wake up and think that you're having a bad day or an off day. Some days are better than others, but how we're actually walking through life, we've been conditioned to react in that way over time by our past experiences, different scenarios and things we've lived through. So for example, for me, growing up with constant instability, I learned early on that the only way to stay safe in a dangerous situation was to look tough on the outside. And that's where that fight came from. But I also learned flight, like I talked about earlier. We moved around so much that we were never in one place for more than a couple months. So school, neighborhoods, churches, nothing ever stuck. My nervous system was wired to think that instability was normal. And so if I was in one place for too long, I would actually start to look for ways to sabotage that. And when things got hard, my default really was, I'll just move on. like I mentioned earlier, right? Get a new job, get a new boyfriend, and just move. And the reality is that every one of us has our own version of this. I like to call them your 4 default modes. So we talked about fight and flight as the 2 big ones that everyone knows, and those were my strong ones. But we have fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. And so we have that analysis paralysis. You don't really do anything, and then we have our people pleasers that put their needs last to show up for everybody else. Those are all defaults, and they've been conditioned by the way we have been raised, our family, our church family, things that have come up that have built out our belief system, but then starts to get stuck in our bodies. So your past has trained your nervous system, and it shows up when stress hits the present moment. And here's the thing, when you're stuck in those old patterns, it doesn't just make you reactive, it actually blocks your intuition. Because, I mean, think about it. It makes sense. If your body is busy bracing for a fight, right? Or scanning the room for an exit sign, then there's no space left to hear that quiet inner voice, that gut feeling that helps us make better decisions. Stress hijacks your thinking, and your intuition goes quiet under pressure as well. So both are impacted. Now, because we are talking about clarity and intuition today, let's quickly define them, shall we? My family and I just got back from our version of camping. We go out into the woods and stay in a very bare bones cabin. I mean, it's very rustic. There's a toilet and a shower, but there's no refrigerator. So we pack all our food in a cooler. But it is beautiful. There's a gorgeous lake, and we love to kayak. We love to go fishing there. We love to go boating. And around this time of year, you guys, we just got back a couple weeks ago. It's gorgeous. The trees are turning a bright orange and yellow, and it's just fantastic. But once the sun goes down, it gets pitch black. You literally can't see anything. So you do have a short window of time where you're taking in all of this beauty. But so unless you're near a campfire or holding a flashlight, then you can't see anything. And I want you to think of the flashlight that you might hold as providing you clarity. And whereas, and I have the 2 pictures here, so you've got the flashlight, and I'll go into this a little bit more, but that flashlight, when you're in the woods, you can't see anything, so you need light. And then on the right-hand side is a compass. And so I want you to picture that clarity is that flashlight. It shows you what is right in front of you. Whereas intuition, on the other hand, is like a compass. It's that gut feeling, right? That guides you to the next right step. Come on. I mean, raise some virtual hands or drop it in the chat, put a Y for yes or an N for no. Have you ever met someone for the first time and you instantly either went, I really like this person, or something feels a little off and I can't put my finger on it? Yeah, right. Lots of yeses, lots of yeses. And that's intuition. So intuition is the compass that points in the right direction. But if you're standing in the dark with a compass, for example, right, but no flashlight, you won't take the next step because you can't see where you're going. Right? You can look at your compass all day long, but if you can't see through the pitch dark, you won't ever get out of the woods. And the same thing is true if you have a flashlight, but you have no compass. You can walk all night long through those woods, but also never find your way out, right? You can get lost very easily. And so that's why we need both. They both interact. And I just wanted to make sure we took some time to talk about that. And so the problem is that when stress takes over, your brain literally gets hijacked. That front part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex that's responsible for making clear decisions, rational decisions, goes offline. And meanwhile, your survival brain, your animal brain back here in the back, and the amygdala, that's what takes the wheel. And for, just getting basics here, the amygdala is that part of the brain that is the smoke detector. It scans the environment for anything that seems dangerous. And that's the whole purpose of it. But depending on what we've experienced in our life, that amygdala has also actually been found to be enlarged in people that have lived through adverse situations. But our amygdala is going to be more sensitive to thinking that something in the environment is dangerous when it really isn't, meaning it's not life or death. It just is going to send that signal and it reacts the same regardless, right? Of whether or not a bear or a tiger is chasing you, as to, your boss sent you an email and you just didn't like the tone. And so because this part of our brain that allows us to think clearly and logically goes offline, that is why we lose both our flashlight and our compass, because we're not up here. We cannot even think about, clarity, where we're trying to get, and then even like stop to listen to the voice of, well, what is the best thing? So how do you know when that's happening? How do you know when you are in one of those reactive default modes? Well, we've got some signs here that shows you that you are in reactivity. These are just some examples that you can look at. So if your chest tightens up and your heart is racing or your stomach drops, that's an indicator that your body is now reactive and it's going to grasp onto the default mode, fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, that you've become accustomed to over time. You blurt something out that you regret, or you shut down completely. You feel defensive, snappy, or want to prove your point. Oh, that was me all day. You avoid the issue altogether, hoping it just works itself out. I had a boss once a long, long time ago who used to say this phrase, it'll work itself out. Everything would work itself out, regardless of how big or small the challenge was. Everything would work itself out. She was completely avoidant of the situation. So she was very much a freeze person, and then even a little bit of fawn there. So your mind spins in circles and you're just constantly like ruminating, but you can't ever land on a clear decision. You overreact to small things. Oh my gosh, that was me. Or underreact when something's really important. So you're in a meeting and somebody missed a step, and you know that they missed something, but in those moments you feel like you just can't speak up and you can't say anything for whatever reason. You think somebody's going to be mad at you, or you're blaming somebody. So instead of speaking up and saying, hey, excuse me, we actually forgot this important step, you just don't say anything, even though it's really important. Does anybody see themselves in any one of these? Yep. Okay. Okay. Yep. Kim, I see that. Okay. All right. Yeah. And I'm hopeful that this isn't to like call anybody out. I'm hoping that at this point you kind of have picked up my story, which is that we all are going to be in one of these because we're alive and we're human. So it's hopefully making this feel a little bit more normal. Like there's nothing wrong with you. There's just an immense amount of stress, and we can work through that together. So I do want to say that in those moments of reactivity, so one of these signs sound familiar to you, even though we're in those moments, sometimes we don't notice it until way later when we're reaching for a coping mechanism. And that might look like overeating, over drinking, binge watching something, scrolling right endlessly on your phone because we're avoiding something. Those behaviors aren't random. They're ways that we try to soothe a nervous system that's been stuck in survival mode. So I want to kind of parse those out, but those are other indicators. If you couldn't quite pick out one of the signs that you're stuck in reactivity, one of those other things you might be leaning on towards a coping mechanism. When you reach for those behaviors, that is your key that something is going on and you were emotionally reactive. All right, so here's the key. We talked about at this point that you can't access your intuition if your nervous system is still in a default mode that's emotionally reactive. I have a 3-step system that's about calming yourself down enough to get clarity back so that your intuition even has a chance to be heard. And Katie's going to tell us more about intuition and specifically how to listen to it, how to access it, how to know when it's intuition and it's not something else, right? But she's going to dive into that. And so I want to introduce my 3-step system, which is the EDN Framework. It's a proprietary system. It's a proven system. And it will help you think of it this way. Think of it as like clearing static on the radio. Once the noise dies down, once you've been able to land on a channel and it's not just pure chaos, and it's quiet enough, there's a more static. K is going to then show you how to actually fine tune and tap into that inner frequency and use it as your guide. All right, so step one, let's talk about step one, evaluate. Of the EDN framework. So step one is about noticing what's really happening in your body before you do anything else. Because at this point, you're not thinking, so you've got to just figure out your nervous system is going to give you clues by way of what's happening in your body. And remember that my default mode used to be fight and flight, but I never stopped to notice what I was actually feeling. I just reacted. And evaluate is that pause. It's saying, okay, my chest is tight. My jaw is clenched. I'm holding my fists in a ball. I'm sweaty, or I feel like I'm going to snap back and punch you in the face. All of those things will start to show up in your body. And so it leaves clues. When you can start to name what it is that's happening for you, right? Okay, I'm sweating. I can't breathe. My chest is turning red. You create enough space just by naming and having that observation or evaluating. You create enough space between you and the reaction. And that pause is the very first step to calming your nervous system down. Which then brings us to step two, which is de-escalate. Once you notice what's happening, you've got to try to take some action to calm your nervous system down. Otherwise, the reaction just keeps running the show. For me, this looked like small practical tools that I could use right away in the moment. So I'm going to share those with you, some of the ones that I turn to all of the time. And it can be something as simple as just taking a sip of water before answering a tough question. This can help tremendously when a meeting is getting out of hand, or maybe you're put on the spot and that's not your jam. And someone asks you a question, you can just have some drink, right? There's nothing saying that you can't have a drink. And I love this because all you're doing is taking a drink, a sip of your drink, and you're not letting the room know or anybody else know that, hey, you are like triggered right now. You're emotionally reactive. You're just knowingly taking that moment to pause before you go into panic mode and maybe not even respond in the best way. Other times I love pen and paper. So in meetings, I always have like a notepad and a pen. And one of the things I would do there is just write the words, I am safe, over and over on a piece of paper. And it would look like to everyone else like I was just taking notes. But what it's allowed me to do is to, as you're writing, as you're seeing those words, it's involving now that prefrontal cortex of your brain. So it also is offering you a buffer because now you have to read what it says and you're sending yourself a message at the same time. I am safe. So it's going to start to slow things down and remind you that this isn't life or death, right? Now, over time, doing these things over and over actually trained my body to start to calm itself down automatically or know to reach for things. So over time, I already can identify those cues in my body, but it takes time to build that up. So the key isn't that you're going to be perfect from out of the gate. You have to give yourself time. And that's actually what I teach in my 6-week challenge, how to build these habits into muscle memory. So that's something that interests you. Let me know after today. Let's keep going. Step 3, navigate. Once you've calmed your body and your brain is back online, then you can make a clear, intentional choice about what to do next. For me, this meant no longer just defaulting to fight or flight. Instead of snapping back or running away, I could pause, I could see the bigger picture, and then choose a response that actually moved things forward. So whether it was having a conversation with somebody or regrouping tomorrow, I didn't just react in the moment. I gave it a buffer of space. Navigate is about taking action, but from a place of clarity instead of survival mode. That's when you stop reacting and actually start responding in a way that aligns with who you want to be and the results that you actually want, right? Because if we also come to a situation heated, the other people that we're trying to interact with are just going to shut down, right? Or they're going to become as defensive, and then it's no longer a productive conversation, no matter whether it's a work meeting or in a relationship. So that's what Navigate lets you do, is to be able to show up more thoughtfully. So just to recap at this point, E is for evaluate, and that is noticing what's really going on in your body and emotions. De-escalate is calming your nervous system with simple tools in the moment. And we talked about taking a sip of your drink, and we talked about writing down, I am safe on a notepad as you're in a meeting. And navigate is choosing your next step from the from a place of clarity at this point instead of survival mode, because now you're thinking a little bit better. I'm going to show you what this looks like in real life with a quick story before we turn it over to Katie. And that's the pumice stone story. For years, there was this buildup in my shower that drove me nuts. And every time I saw it, I'd get frustrated. And every time I brought it up to my husband, I came in with irritation. Not surprisingly, right? But nothing would get done. And one day I slowed down. I used my own system. I evaluated what I was really feeling, frustration and disappointment. So I named the feelings. And then I de-escalated by calming myself before I spoke. So instead of coming in with irritation, I calmed myself and figured out a different way to approach it, which was then navigate it. I navigated differently. I rephrased my ask to instead something like this, hey babe, what would be really helpful for me today? Could you handle that buildup in the shower? Within a week, he grabbed a 99-cent pumice stone, scrubbed it off, and the problem was gone after years of me nagging. So here's the point. When we slow down enough to evaluate, de-escalate, and navigate, we change how we show up. We actually influence outcomes in a way that moves things forward. And like I mentioned before, you're not always going to get this perfectly. We're still human. We're still going to be stressed out. There's still going to be pressure. But the key is that over time, we're making better strategic decisions to more and more situations so that we're not constantly just running on autopilot and letting reactivity run the show. And this is actually a perfect foundation for what Katie's about to share, because once you've cleared the static on that radio, she's going to show you exactly how to tune into your intuition and use it as a guide. All right, Katie, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Nat. I can relate to so much of what you were saying through that. And one of the things that I wanted to call out was really appreciating those simple techniques for the de-escalation, because the beauty of those little moments is that it buys you time to very discreetly to get your thoughts together. And I love that. So really powerful tools, especially when you're in the moment in the presence of others, which is really nice not to have those reactionary moments, because more often than not, we tend to look back on those and regret them. So, okay, so now that you've shown us how to quiet the noise and create space, let's talk about what to do with that clarity. Because in many cases, intuition is one of those most underused leadership skills out there. Most leaders either ignore it or suppress it in favor of spreadsheets or mistake it for guessing. But when you learn to access and trust your intuition, it does become a compass. You stop reacting and you do start leading with that clarity, even when the path is messy. Most of us were trained to override our instincts by using spreadsheets or checklists. We've been in this era of big data for a really long time now. I know that in the workplace, for companies that have been slower to adopt it, it might sound like a newer thing in the past 5 or 10 years, but really it's actually been going on for decades and decades. And don't get me wrong, data is important. We do need to use that as part of that critical thinking. But at the end of the day, the best leaders know how to pair the data with that quiet gut nudge and validate it with smart thinking. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about how to recognize the difference between fear and intuition, quick check methods to assess decisions when data is incomplete, and then how to use intuition as this leadership tool. So let's go ahead and dive right into that. So let's start with the big one. How do you know if what you're feeling is fear or intuition? Because both tend to show up in the body. So this goes back to what Nat was saying about the hijacking of your system, right? So the difference is fear is loud. It's really dramatic. It often feels like it's screaming, "Don't screw this up," or "Run while you still can." It's a survival response, like Nat mentioned, and it spikes adrenaline, makes your chest tighten, your thoughts race. It is reactive. Intuition, on the other hand, it does not shout. It's a nudge. It's often feels calm, even if it's telling you to take a risk. So you might feel a subtle pull in your gut or a steady sense of this is right for me or something feels off. Intuition doesn't panic, it just knows. So think of it like a radio. Fear is the static blasting in your ear, while intuition is the clear signal underneath. And if you just turn that dial just a little bit and lower that noise, you can actually hear the message that's coming through from an intuitive side. So let me give you an example from my own leadership journey. Many years ago, I was running a really, really big project. And at the same time, my position was actually moved to another part of the company, a different department. And a short while after that move, my new leadership team decided they wanted to significantly change my role to something that I had no interest in whatsoever. So I spoke with them a couple of times about this, letting them know like that's not what we agreed on. I'm not interested in this role. So like we have to come to some kind of compromise here. But they decided they were going to stick to their guns and make that change. And I decided also that I was going to stick to my guns, and my gut was telling me to resign. And that deep in my bones feeling was that everything was going to be okay. Now, while I was relying on my intuition, fear was running rampant with the people that were around me. Because at the time, we had literally just signed on a bigger house, which of course comes with a much bigger mortgage payment. And we had a young daughter. And on top of that, the department that I was running that very large project for was getting quite concerned about like, how is this other body of work going to get handled, if Katie steps away. So despite everyone thinking I was a crazy person, legit, I chose the intuition and I went ahead and I resigned. And that decision ultimately allowed me to stay in the company in the role that I was meant to be. So it's a pretty powerful example of how you can trust that even when it feels very scary and even when it feels very risky, and know that at the end of the day it's going to work out the way that it should work out. Does anybody relate to that? Just throw a yes in the comments. Yeah, yeah, a lot of people. So the takeaway that I want you to get from that is that fear really does, it shrinks your world and intuition expands it. And fear, it's really just trying to keep you safe. I mean, that's what's going on in our brains with that. But intuition is really there to help keep you aligned at the end of the day. So let's do a quick mini reflection. So, quick gut check for you. Think of a decision that you regret. And as you think of that, can you identify, did you override any intuition that went into that? So just throw it in the comments when you've come up with one. Yeah, okay. Right? Yep, we're seeing both, right? The intuition, yep, overrode it, didn't work out that great. Um, Okay, now think of an instance where you really nailed it. Did you follow your intuition? So just drop fear or intuition into the chat and let us know which direction you ended up. Yeah. Okay, great. Okay. So we all know that leadership can be really messy. The data is obviously never perfect, and if you wait for 100% clarity, you're likely going to miss the window of opportunity. We talk a lot about that in business, right? Pivot, if you're capable of pivoting not or not. So, how do you use intuition to make decisions in real time? I want to give you three quick check methods that you can use anytime. So, the first quick check method, the pause test. Ask yourself, if I slow down and I check back in tomorrow, does this still feel right? Because here's the thing, intuition is consistent and fear is volatile. So, if something feels true across time, you can trust it. Think of this as this I'm going to sleep on it concept. Um, I know a lot of times, especially even in things that are exciting, I have an exciting decision to make and I want to rush right into it. But if I sleep on it, I often get that clarity in the morning of, am I still actually as excited as I was about it yesterday or not? Has anybody felt that way? Another practice that I like to use here is to put the item out of my mind and see what comes up on its own. So it goes back to that. If you create space for the answers, they'll naturally present themselves versus that overanalysis that we tend to get into. And over time, I've really noticed that that great information comes up when I'm trying not to think about it versus that spin cycle, right? The constant pros, cons, what's the data tell me to do? So, method number two, the body scan. This is simple but powerful. So, close your eyes, take a moment, imagine saying yes to the decision. Notice your body. Does it expand or tighten? Now, imagine saying no. Which feels lighter? Which feels heavier? Your body often knows before your brain rationalizes. And if your brain is still spinning, because sometimes that can be difficult, right? Like you want to take that breath and get present and see how you feel, but your brain is trying to spin and rationalize the answer for you. So if that's still happening, here's a trick that I've given some clients to try that's worked out really well. Write the options on a slip of paper and toss them into a hat or a bowl and pull one out and just notice your reaction. Are you relieved? Or are you like a hell no based on what you pulled out of the hat? That's your intuition cutting through the noise. So, one of the examples that I had of this that was really pretty powerful is this was back several years ago. My daughter was trying to decide which high school to go to. We have a couple around here that have really outstanding programs. And she had been accepted to both, and she just really wasn't sure which one she wanted to do. And I remember this very distinctly because I had blown a disc in my back. And I had a piece of the disc like this big had blown out. It was lodged up under a nerve root on my spinal cord. And so I was just in this excruciating amount of pain, laying on the floor, low key thinking I'm going to die. And my daughter is in need, right? She wants to pick a school and we're going to work through it. So with my analytical hat on, we start with okay, hit the whiteboard concept, right? Like what are your pros? What are your cons? What does each school have to offer? But at the end of that entire exercise, it really came down to it just felt like a wash. It felt even. And she needed that intuitive decision aspect. And so that's where we switched over to the how do you feel? Pick out a name out of the hat. How do you feel about what you just picked? That's the school you're going to go to. Or you could do the reverse. That's the one you're going to turn down. And what does that tell you inside your body? And ultimately, that's what allowed her to make that decision based on what felt right versus this overanalysis of the information. So let's talk really quickly about the third method, the alignment check. So this is just asking, does this choice align with my values, my vision, and the leader that I want to be? If the answer is no, it's usually a sign that you're about to trade some long-term integrity for some short-term comfort. Now, I used this exact alignment check before leaving a role that was seriously burning me out. And it was one of those where it was like on paper, it looked like staying was the smart move. But when I ran it against my values check, it was crystal clear. Staying meant betraying what mattered most to me. So I made that choice to go ahead and go. And at the end of the day, leaving opened the door to the work I'm doing now, which is infinitely more aligned and impactful. So let's try this together. We'll just take a quick minute. Think of a decision you have on your plate right now. Doesn't have to be huge. And just take a moment and run it through one of these checks. You could do the pause test, go ahead and run a body scan, or go ahead and check it against your alignment with your values and vision and who you want to be as a leader. And just go ahead and take that minute. And then when you're ready, drop it in the chat. Which check gives you the most clarity? Yeah, okay, we're seeing some come in, pause, body scan, alignment. Great. But at the end of the day, it's just pick one and try it. And you could then move on to the next one if you feel like you're not getting the clarity that you need from one of the other two. Here's the shift I want you to walk away with. Intuition isn't luck, guessing, or a last minute ditch backup plan. It's a compass. Most leaders only turn to it when everything's on fire and data's not enough. But the badass move is using intuition daily, alongside data, as part of your holistic system. It's part of your entire ecosystem and your entire tool set. So think about it this way. Data is your map, intuition is your compass. This goes very much back to this flashlight clarity compass direction. The map gives you routes, facts, and numbers, and the compass tells you direction, what's aligned, what's not, and what actually feels true for you. Data can tell you if the bridge exists. Intuition tells you if you actually want to cross that bridge. So, in practice, what this could look like for you, you could start strategy meetings with a gut check before diving into the numbers, asking, what's our intuitive sense of what's really happening here? You could ask your team after reviewing the data, does this feel aligned or are we forcing it? How many times have you been in that situation, right? Where you are just trying to force the answer to fit the situation? Or normalizing intuitive insights and discussions. When someone says something feels off, instead of brushing it off, use it as a signal to investigate. When you lead this way, your team learns to trust their own inner knowing too. And that's how you build organizations that don't just follow the data, they follow wisdom. So here's my challenge this week. Before you make a decision, big or small, pause for 60 seconds, gut check it. Write down the intuitive nudge you feel, then track it. Did you follow it and what happened? Or did you not follow it and what happened? Because here's the deal, fear is always going to create static. It's always going to hijack your system, like Nat said. And when you learn to tune the dial, quiet the noise, and listen for the signal, you stop reacting and you start responding. Intuition isn't woo woo, it's a wisdom you already have, waiting for you to use it consciously, because I am all about conscious choice. So when you trust that inner compass, you become the kind of leader people want to follow, even when the path forward is unclear. And it almost always is. Thank you so much for joining us today. And we're so happy to see so many of you have stayed on till the end here. So we wanted to give you a little bit of information about how to get in touch with us. If you have any questions, you can email either of us. Here, our emails are here on the screen. And be sure to follow Nat on YouTube at Nat Trodahl and check out more resources at liberatedleader.me.